Hi, I'm Patrick Jagir with Cosmic Alchemist Astrology, and thanks for tuning in today. Thanks for tuning into this video. So this is my September 2022 astrological forecast and analysis. So I'm going to talk about the month of September, what's going on, the significance of it, and how it is basically shaping our material human world. So thank you very much to everybody who subscribes to this channel, who watches, who shares the videos, likes, comments. It's all very helpful. I appreciate you. It's very encouraging. And if you're not yet a subscriber, I ask you to consider doing so. Every time I upload a new video, you'll get an alert for that. So let's get into this. So September 2022. It's not quite interesting yet. And my God, I can't wait till it gets interesting. I've been pretty bored and frustrated for many years. If you've been following this channel, you know what I'm talking about. I've had a weird life. I've had a weird background. If you don't follow this channel, if you're new to this, basically what I'm talking about. Yeah, I've had a weird life. I'm from a weird family. I was an intelligence officer in the Navy for a few years, and I learned things that people usually don't. I had people tell me things that were kind of out of the ordinary, and I had very out of the ordinary experiences, which I really haven't gone into yet on this channel, but probably pretty soon. But I've learned some wild stuff. You know, if you've seen my video about my foreknowledge of the whole pandemic and the experimental medicine, you know, I heard about that back in 2005. That's just one example. I was waiting 15 years for that whole thing to go down, because the guy who told me about all that told me it was a whole restructuring of the economy, or at least an attempted restructuring of the world. So I've been bored, silly, for years waiting for something to happen. You know, we only have control of our own lives. That's all we can really do. But we're social animals. We live in communities. And it's pretty frustrating when you have some inkling of what's really going on and everyone around you is fixated on granite countertops and upgrading their BMW and, you know, God knows what other trivialities. So yeah, the boredom and the frustration has been real. It's been thick. It's been heavy. So it's gonna break soon, but you know, it'll be none too soon from my point of view. So September is a kind of a calm before the storm. It's basically the deep breath before the plunge. You know, there's all these different sayings and cliches that talk about this. You know, something intense is going to happen and you get those last moments of preparation before you have to do it. Well, end of October, by the end of October, the intensity is going to be ramped up. It looks like things are just business as usual. You know, and even the circles I run in where, you know, people understand what's going on and so forth. Even the business as usual feeling is really crept back in for us, and people are like, "Oh, I might take a vacation over to, I don't know, over to Europe, and I might start traveling again." And it's like, don't get too attached to travel plans at this point. I mean, you can still travel, but just don't fall into the trap that it's all going back to normal, because we have some work to do before it goes back to normal. And it doesn't mean we're all going to starve, or we're all going to get nuked, or we're all going to FEMA camps. It doesn't mean that. It just means there's fucking work to do. we're going to have to collectively get out of denial that we've been in for about 2,000 years. We've been under the religions of denial from the Middle East, for the last 2,000 years. And because what they do, these religions of denial, these religions from the Middle East, this whole Judeo-Christian tradition, it's all about fixating on the light and on the heavenly. And that's good, because that's half of what exists. But what they teach is they teach a hobbled and crippled form of wisdom, hobbled and crippled by design. So when you only look at the heavenly and the bright light and the unicorns and the rainbows and the tooth fairy, whatever, just all, kisses, lollipops, when it's all light, when it's all heavenly, you're not really wise, because you don't really understand how the dark works. So you basically become a good rule follower, but you're not wise, because you don't understand how people who don't follow those rules that you end up becoming passionate about, you don't understand how those people work, how they do things, and you don't know how to understand what their next step is going to be, or why they did things in the past. So wisdom is really about seeing the light, but almost just as important, or I'd say even more importantly, it's about developing your night vision, metaphorically. It's about being able to go into the dark of the world and of your own being, going into that underworld and finding the wisdom in there. So, and that's just how it works. Some people don't like to hear that, but there's nothing that can be done for it. That's just how it goes. So we have to get out of this hobbled wisdom and be able to look into the underworld, look into the darkness. Because once you acknowledge something, it's at least half the battle in healing and fixing something, is acknowledging what's in the dark, what's in the underworld, what is perhaps not nice, quote unquote bad or evil. You have to acknowledge those things, and you can understand them, and then you can fix situations. When you're just fixated on following the rules and staring up to heaven, it's basically like you're limiting yourself to a childlike mentality. So wisdom is about seeing the full circle. It's not just about the top half, which is light. It's also the bottom half, relatively, which is darkness, which is the underworld. So yeah, things are getting better, things are on their way. We're going to have a hell of a decade, though. We have a lot of work to do, and we have adjustments to go through. So don't get stuck on the fear-mongering about the starvation and the FEMA camps and the bloodbath and the nuclear war and the blah, 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 blah. That's just mainstream media makes money when they're sensational. When they're sensational, people watch them. And alternative media, who bitches about the mainstream media, does the same exact thing. I don't want to name any names on here, but some popular people in the truth movement, the conspiracy world, even in the health movement. They love to scare the shit out of people because they get clicks, they get subscriptions, people buy things from their web stores. So, yeah, don't get taken in by that. Just get through this. Be your most genuine self. Being your most genuine self is what gets you through pretty much everything. Even with the pandemic, with that virus, I think it was burning dead wood from the world. And the dead wood in our world is basically not being ourselves and just being who the figures of authority in our lives want us to be. So, be yourself, be your most genuine self, do it as fearlessly as possible and fucking go for it. And you're protected from a lot of things. That's what I recommend. It's worked for me. So, but yeah, getting back onto the topic here, September. I don't want to make this summary too long. So yeah, calm before the storm. I think information is going to start leaking out into the world. Information about things that happened in the past. Past misconduct, conspiratorial activity, scandals, conspiracies, cover-ups, you know, that whole bit. Now, when I say this, I always have to couch it in the reality of the times we're living in. Because those of us who lived, including myself, those of us who lived, who were born and lived during what I call the World War II party. The World War II party was a 75-year period from 1945 to 2020. And this is when people of the Western world, and particularly Americans, thought they had the world by the balls because they supposedly defeated the Nazis single-handedly. So we thought we could be the biggest spoiled brats on the planet and do anything and be selfish and basically just bully the world, and we had the right to do that. And we lived lives of convenience to the point where we panic when that convenience gets threatened. So in that 75-year period, in that post-World War II party, we had consensus, and this is something that, I mean, both parties talk about it, but the left is all about it. They justify censoring the news, censoring YouTube, social media, under the justification of, well, we need to have consensus because it'll make dangerous people who do dangerous things if we don't have consensus. Consensus is a euphemism for brainwashing. And this brainwashing got people to see everything pretty much the same way, or at least within narrow margins. So, you know, Democrat versus Republican. They're basically seeing things the same way, but they have this minuscule difference between them. It's a very narrow debate. So, when we had this consensus, people saw things, everything in the world, basically the same way. And so, whenever news headlines would come out, the vast majority of the world would believe it. And they would be these undisputable headlines. Well, the time of undisputable headlines has gone. And especially people who are relatively much more awake right now. We've had so many bombshells of news stories dropped on us, especially the whole Jeffrey Epstein story. It was proof that there is a secret, elite, you know, sex society that people got made fun of as conspiracy theorists for suggesting it was possible. Stanley Kubrick, one of the greatest directors ever in Hollywood, made a 2.5-hour, 3-hour movie out of it, Eyes Wide Shut, and he was telling you, yep, these things exist. Well, it took another, almost 25 years for it to come out. But people still don't see it. And they're like, well, those are just those dirtbag billionaires. Even though, you know, Bill Clinton was on the island 25 times. He was on Epstein's plane 25 times. You know, even these weird people like Stephen Hawking, I can't imagine what he was doing at Epstein's sex island, but, you know, use your imagination. So many people like that. So many progressive people, not just conservatives. So, but it just goes to show there are no undisputable headlines anymore because people don't agree, because about 30% of the population is actively working their way out of the brainwashing we've been under for generations. Another 30% of the population is doubling down on that brainwashing, and then the 40% in the middle doesn't know which way to go. A lot of them don't believe anything anymore because they haven't been raised to trust their own intuition and their own discernment. So they're basically floundering in the middle. And this is who the powers that be, you know, the elite, the Illuminati, the global elite, whatever, they're trying to target this 40% right now and get as much of that market share as possible. So, yeah, there are no more undisputable headlines. But with that said, information is going to come out that many of us are going to recognize the significance of. But the good thing is that more and more people are going to start recognizing the significance of this new information, of these new revelations, of these new disclosures. You know, it's not going to be a headline like Japanese Empire bombs Pearl Harbor. Everybody get ready to fight, and everybody does it. Not going to be like that. And that's what everyone wants to happen, you know. Like, it's like I always say, they want to go back to the good old days of Ronnie Reagan or World War II or the Civil Rights Movement. Well, it's not going to happen. But new information is coming out. What's causing this? And I'll wrap up this summary here in a few minutes. What's causing this? You've got Saturn and Uranus both retrograde. Saturn moves a little faster. So Saturn is catching Uranus. They're going to make a square by the 30th, by the end of the month. The other big one, September the 10th, in the wee hours, like around midnight, you're going to have Mercury go retrograde in Virgo. It's going to be sidereal Virgo. It's going to be Western astrology speaking, it's going to be Libra. At this point, I'm kind of factoring both because, you know, Western astrology is it's basically set to the seasons. It's like seasonal astrology, whereas sidereal astrology takes the actual physical constellations into account, where the planets are transiting. So I like the both because the Western does give it a seasonal energy. So yeah, it's Mercury stations goes retrograde, 14 degrees Virgo sidereally, and what is that? That's 8 degrees Libra in the Western. So that Mercury retrograde, it's going to be about sort of the conflicts in our world. It's going to be about cleaning up our world, speaking through the standpoint of Virgo. When you're talking about Libra, it's going to be about how to bring the world to balance. So, going back to sidereal, Mercury being in Virgo, strongest sign Mercury can be in. And then a retrograde Mercury makes it even stronger. So this is as strong as Mercury can possibly be. So, pretty interesting. Now, you know, one thing here, like an historical tie-in, you got this Mercury retrograde going on in sidereal Virgo and partly in Western Libra. So when Mercury gets to the lower degrees of sidereal Virgo as the month wears on, it's going to be opposite Jupiter. And you know, the interesting thing about this is, did a little research, and a Mercury retrograde in Virgo hasn't been opposed to Jupiter since it was like 1975. And if you're not familiar with astrology, an opposition is when when two planets are in opposite signs at similar degrees. So 1975 was an interesting year. It was kind of in the middle of the suck for America. The 70s sucked here in America. The economy sucked. Clothes looked like shit. You know, it's like the music sucked. People's hair was weird. You know, it was like what the fuck happened? We were demoralized from basically a stupid war in Vietnam, a war that was meant to be lost so people could make money. That was winding down. That ended on what, April 30th, I think, 1975, when officially when the last Americans left Vietnam. South Vietnam fell to the communists coming in from North Vietnam. Gerald Ford was president. You know, Joe Biden is like a reincarnation of Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford was always like falling down the stairs coming off Air Force One. And he was falling down all the time. Chevy Chase used to make fun of him. He used to impersonate him on Saturday Night Live, and he was always falling. I think he hurt his back doing it. So, you had a clown of a president. We have a I mean, all the presidents are clowns, but we've got a super clown of a president right now. But he's got dementia on top of it. So he's kind of like a Ronald Reagan and a Gerald Ford rolled into one. So yeah, the 70s were shitty. I think there was a stock market crash in like 73 or 74. The gas prices went up. It was all the gas drama in the Middle East. You know, OPEC was playing games. It was the beginning of the era of the compact car. So there's a lot of shittiness going on. Now, with the 70s, the way I look at it is the vast majority of the population took the bait. So when the economy sucks, if you're a powerful person, you want to distract and entertain and divert the population. You don't want them to be focused on their grievances and how to fix them. So in the 70s, you know, what did they do when the economy went bad? Well, America was already flooded with America was already flooded with heroin from Southeast Asia. That was one of the purposes of the war in Vietnam, was to get a steady trade going from the Golden Triangle. So Golden Triangle, it's an area in the foothills of the Himalayas, so we're talking like southern China, was it northern Burma, and kind of like northern Thailand, northern Laos. So basically vested interests wanted to set up a steady stream of heroin coming into America. So that was one of the reasons, one of the economic reasons for going to war in Vietnam for 10 plus years. So the country during the 70s, again, back to the point, country was already flooded with heroin. Well, then they started flooding it with cocaine, because heroin's not for everybody. Looks pretty creepy. I've never done it, but, jabbing your veins, with a needle. I guess people snort it and smoke it too, but, people have their different tastes for drugs. It wasn't for everybody. It's a downer. So they get the uppers. They got the uppers into the country. They flew the cocaine in from South America, landed in Arkansas, got distributed from there. Kept that rolling through the 80s. So people in the 70s, they fell for the drugs, they fell for the materialism, they fell for the entertainment. And, a lot of big things were coming out in the 70s. Like, there were hearings in the Senate where CIA admitted to mind control programs like MK Ultra. But, people took the bait. They took the entertainment and materialism, and they were like, well, experts will handle it. Don't need to worry about that. So, with all these similarities, with, again, this Mercury retrograde in Virgo, opposed by Jupiter in Pisces, I haven't seen this since the 70s. Our challenge right now is to not fall for the bait like we did as American people and as Westerners back in the 70s. Don't fall for the drugs. Don't fall for the gold digging. Don't fall for the entertainment and the materialism. Stay focused on your desire to see a better world. If you have the wherewithal for that desire, if you think the world's amazing, you're probably not watching this video anyway. I mean, and the world is amazing, life is amazing, but I'm talking about all the financial games, the mind games that people in power play. Okay, so yeah, mentioned the Mercury retrograde. We're going to have 6 planets in retrograde this month. That's a big deal. Planets are more powerful when they're in retrograde. So when they look like they're moving backward, from our perspective on Earth, things that those planets deal with, they go back and they drag old information information about things that we didn't see clearly. Drags it out of the dark for us to review it and for us to get the lesson. So we can get the lesson, so we can learn something and evolve and mature and move forward. So 6 planets in retrograde, all the outer planets plus Mercury. It's a big ass deal. One of these retrograde planets, here's an interesting one. One of these, we're going to, on September the 11th, Neptune, which has been in retrograde for some time. I check my notes here. Neptune went into retrograde on the 28th of June this year, 2020. And it'll station and go direct on December 3rd. So that's a good, 5+ month retrograde. So that Neptune retrograde started in Pisces, in the low degrees of Pisces, around 2 to 3 degrees Pisces sidereally. It's going to go back to sidereal Aquarius, where it already transited through. So that's a big deal. Neptune is the planet of intuition, of divinity, of spirituality. Has a lot to do with words, sort of the spells you can cast with words. Neptune also deals with virtual realities. So not just news media, but just media in general, visual, audio media that comes to you through a TV screen, a computer screen, your cell phone. Media that comes to you through those screens, or radio, podcasts, they're all forms of virtual reality. Because if you're not listening to someone say something, if you're not watching an event, if you're just watching or listening to a recorded transmission, you are interacting with a visual reality that's being edited in a certain way to influence your perception. And a lot of the time, these things are edited because we like our echo chambers. So if you have a news channel you like, it's kind of an echo chamber. So an echo chamber is an environment you go to, or a community that you join, where people tell you what you want to hear. You have a point of view that you want to hear about. You want information to be conveyed to you with a certain bias, and you go to that. So it's an echo chamber. It's basically your views get bounced back to you. So, these echo chambers, they use virtual reality. So they don't show us what's really going on. They show us the side of it that they want us to see. So, and many things are echo chambers: religions, political parties, academia, media, as I've been going on about. So it's everywhere. We have to challenge ourselves to look at other points of view and to grow. A lot of people, once they graduate from high school, graduate from college, they consider themselves to be done learning. They don't learn anything new. And they're just always talking about what they learned back in the day and how brilliant they are because of it. So challenge yourself to go beyond that, because there is new information coming. So having this Neptune, this retrograde Neptune, transit back into Aquarius from Pisces, sidereally speaking, on September the 11th, that's a big deal. So I'm sure all of you watching, you know about September 11th. A group of semi-literate Islamic fanatics, supposedly, allegedly, planned the most sophisticated terrorist attack in history from a cave in Afghanistan, and supposedly hijacked airliners, flew them into the World Trade Towers, which allegedly, jet fuel brought those towers allegedly down, and they allegedly crashed into the Pentagon, even though the hole in the Pentagon was only about, 6 to 8 feet in diameter, and there was no airplane engines, airplane tails. The airliner magically vaporized. So that allegedly happened on September the 11th. So you can probably guess where I stand on the whole 9/11 narrative. So 21 years later, this year, we get this Neptune retrograde going from Pisces back to Aquarius. So Neptune's home sign is Pisces. Pisces is also spirituality, intuition, it's the spirit world, it's hidden things, it's occult information. So, and then Aquarius is we the people, it's science, technology as well. So I think on that day, this is a big deal. I haven't seen anyone else talk about this yet. But on that day, Neptune retrograding from Pisces to Aquarius, Aquarius being we the people, I think we're going to get some big information about that whole 9/11 thing. What really happened on 9/11. And that is going to shed some light on how false flag attacks work. And we just went through one from 2020 to now. So, false flags have been going on forever. But we have an opportunity here to really learn something about how these things work. So yeah, I think some sort of 9/11 type disclosure. Somebody's going to come out and say something, or some, I don't know, document's going to get dumped. Again, excuse me. Again, this is not going to be an undisputable headline like Japan bombs Pearl Harbor that mobilizes the whole world and gets everyone on one page, and gives us a warm fuzzy again. And gives us unity, this unity everybody talks about. Unity can be very good, it can be very dark too. So, we're not going to get undisputable information here, but something's going to come out that is going to wake some more people up. Because like I said, 30% of the population is doubling down and being asleep. 30% of the population is actively waking themselves up. Then you get the 40% in the middle, where everybody's competing for. People within that 40% are gradually waking up. It's going to start happening fast. In 2 years, when the cycles of World War II and the Revolution come back, especially when America has its Pluto return, which brings a second American Revolution in the summer of 2024. The awakening is going to accelerate up to that. People who you never would have imagined would be about freedom and looking into the truth of things, looking into alternative perspectives. You're going to be surprised who wakes up to that stuff and who turns themselves onto it. So, and who gets divinely inspired. So, Neptune, again, which is retrograding from Pisces to Aquarius on September 11th, Neptune is divine inspiration and Pisces is divine inspiration. So to me, divine inspiration goes from Pisces to Aquarius, to we the people. And Neptune is the vehicle to bring it there. So we're going to learn something. Fall equinox this month, the pivot point of the year. And those are pretty much the big things in a month here. So, longer summary than I thought, but, gotta do what you gotta do. So, thanks for tuning in. If you want to be at the end of the road here, I'm going to go through the days, significant days, kind of one by one here, if you want to stick around. So, let's get into that. So, first day of significance here, September the 6th. So Mars, which is, well, actually either way, whether you're talking about sidereal or tropical, Vedic or Western, Mars will conjunct Aldebaran on September the 6th. Aldebaran is one of the royal stars. So the royal stars are the 4 big fixed stars. So we're talking Aldebaran, Regulus, Antares, and what's that called? Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut. So Aldebaran. So sidereal 15 Taurus, and then what is that? Western 9 Gemini. So Aldebaran. Aldebaran's the bull. So, this is the bull portion of the Sphinx. So the Sphinx, it's the animals from the 4 cardinal signs. So, the bull, the lion, the angel, and then the eagle. So the eagle is basically the scorpion of Scorpio, but transformed to basically a higher form. So yeah, so Aldebaran is the bull. So Aldebaran's themes are very Tauran in nature, have to do with Taurus. So Aldebaran brings honor, responsibility, intelligence, eloquence, steadfastness, integrity, popularity, courage, ferocity. But then even there's this tendency towards sedition, so sort of towards backstabbing, spying, deceit. People are often get recruited as spies. People commit betrayals because of their desires, because they want something and they want more than they have. And they think the only way to get it is to kind of sell somebody out. So this is very important with this movement of Mars here. And actually another thing about Aldebaran is that all of these desires and all of these benefits that it brings, they seldom last long. You know, it's kind of like with Hollywood, right? Or with politics. People are hot and they're popular for a little while, but then after a while they're old news and it's like, next, let's get to the next one. So it's all about the desire for these things and even being gifted with them, but they don't really last long. Also with Aldebaran, there are some meanings that deal with misfortune, violence, sickness. So it's like how celebrities burn themselves out. Or basically, you know, people, they have meltdowns, they might commit a murder, they might commit suicide because they lose their fame. So the reason I bring this up, Mars is going to station in retrograde on October the 30th. And so, yeah, October 30th, 31st. So it's going to do this at 1 degree of Gemini in the sidereal, 25 Gemini in Western. So, and that's going to deal with basically, you know, energy just being scattered. Mars in Gemini means like you're trying to do 100 different things at once, so your energy's scattered. It's hard to do things. Then Mars retrograde, stationing in retrograde in October is going to be a big deal. I think it's gonna really beat some people's asses. So we're talking like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and then Xi Jinping, the ruler of China. These people's plans are going to blow up in their faces. And because Mars at the past Aldebaran on the way to this 1st degree of Gemini, where it's going to station in retrograde, it's picked up this desire for all these blessings and all these things and all these desires at this halfway point in Taurus. So these people are basically, I think, going to get their hands caught in the cookie jar. What's going to come to light is all of their deceit and their sedition that they've committed trying to get the things they desire. So, yeah, I think that was interesting. Alright, September the 10th, big day, 2 events. Mercury is about 12:30 a.m. here in the East Coast of the United States. Mercury stations to go retrograde, 14 degrees Virgo, sidereal, and what is that, 8 degrees Libra, Western. So, Mercury is going to retrograde in the sidereal. It's going to go from 14 Virgo back to 0 Virgo, and Western is going to go 8 Libra back to 24 degrees Virgo. So, like I said, especially when you look at it from the sidereal point of view, strongest possible Mercury is a Mercury not only in its home sign of Virgo, but retrograde. Because Mercury is the intellect. The intellect takes things apart, it analyzes things, it sorts things out, it corrects things. So it's no stronger. And then it's going to have Jupiter looking at it So basically, Jupiter and Mercury are going to have this kind of a negotiation. Jupiter's going to bring in a higher perspective to lend to our intellects. So, big Mercury retrograde. Especially if you look at it from America's standpoint, Virgo is the 10th house of government and of public reputation. So we're going to have to look twice about what our national reputation is in the world. And what the hell has our government been doing for the last couple of years and, for the last 100 years, 150 years, or even for the last 250 years. We're going to get a second look at all this, or at least an opportunity to do so. So, yeah. And then Mercury will it'll retrograde until October the 2nd, and it's going to come out of shadow on October 16th. So a shadow period is after a planet goes backwards and retrogrades, it has to once again cross the degrees that it retrograded through. So it's kind of like the retrograde's still going on. It's not as strong, but there's a residue of it. Okay, and then on that day too is the harvest moon. So the harvest moon is the full moon closest to but before the fall equinox. So this year, September the 10th, sidereal, it is a full moon at 23 degrees of Aquarius and then 17 Pisces. So on September the 10th, sidereally, the sun, it's 23 Leo and then 17 Virgo. So the harvest moon is all about basically reaping the benefits of all the work we did in the year. So the first half of a year, so we're talking spring equinox to fall equinox, so Aries through to the end of Virgo. That's the first half of the year. That's the more positive part of the year. That is the year where we sort of live to find our power in the external world, to accomplish things in the external world. And then Libra, through Pisces, that's more the negative part of the year. So I'm not talking bad, evil, miserable, but it's a time of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere where we go more inward. We go more inside of ourselves and we face ourselves and we deal with ourselves. And we basically kind of reinvent ourselves and work on ourselves. So that harvest moon, that's kind of the last hurrah in that half of the year when you have more light than dark. So beginning of Aries, so Aries through Virgo, there's more light than dark. And Libra through Pisces, you get that fall equinox, the days are shorter than the nights. So when I say negative part of the year, there's physically in the Northern Hemisphere more dark than light. So the harvest moon is that last hurrah in that time of the year where there's more light than dark. So it's a time to really just kind of start to reflect on the year up to that point and everything we accomplished, and just enjoy the fruits of our labors, just kind of kick back a little bit. So, and it's basically the end of the agricultural year. Some things, a lot of things get harvested past that, but that's a big checkpoint in the agricultural year. Basically a lot of the work is done by that point. September 11th I mentioned, that's going to be its own video because that's a big deal. But, I will say though, that retrograde Neptune, it is in a lunar mansion, a constellation that's within, that straddles Aquarius and Pisces. It straddles a cusp. It's called Purva Bhadrapada. Can't remember the Western name for it. But it deals with occult information, hidden things, mysteries, and also genuineness and optimism. So, and it's like I said, wisdom, only heavenliness and light, and all that stuff, it's only one half of wisdom. The other half of wisdom is darkness. It's the underworld. It's hidden things. It's unpleasant things. So, yeah, that Neptune is in a constellation where it can really drop us a bombshell, a truth bomb. Okay. What else? Oh, and the other thing too about September 11th, Moon and Jupiter are conjunct in Pisces. They're conjunct within a degree. So it takes Neptune a long time to transit a degree. But according to my reckoning, basically the minute that it crosses into Aquarius, Jupiter and Moon are within 1 degree of each other. Pretty good conjunction, pretty tight conjunction. So Jupiter is higher perspective, higher spirituality, super consciousness. Moon is our mind, it's our personal emotional selves. So basically Jupiter, the guru of the cosmos, the higher perspective, is telling our emotional selves, look over there, look at what Neptune's going to show you. My take on it. Let me see. September 17th, Sun goes to 0 degrees Virgo, sidereal, 24 degrees Virgo, Western. So yeah, September 17th, it's a sidereal day. Sun transits in a Virgo. We're really in that harvest season. The year's about to start winding down. But it's going to wind up in the human world, even though the natural world is winding down and the days are going to get shorter. And then that fall equinox, September the 21st. So this is a day of equal dark, equal light. It's also, it's halfway between first day of fall and first day of winter. So I look at the beginning of the seasons not at equinoxes and solstices, but on the points in between. So the first day of fall is in the first week of August. First day of winter, it's around November 1st. So sun's right in the middle on the equinox. So yeah, the days and nights will be equal, and then the next day will be longer than the days. So turning point of the year here, fall equinox. So sidereally speaking, fall equinox, Sun is at 4 degrees of Virgo, but in Western, 0 degrees Libra. Libra is that turning point in the year. It's the balance point. And interesting equinox because we've got Saturn and Uranus almost in a square. So that Saturn-Uranus square, that is all about basically a tug of war between obligation and identity. So obligation, Capricorn, identity, Aries. It's a tug of war between the leaders in the world and natural law, which is Capricorn and Saturn. The leaders are Aries. And, Uranus, which is in Aries, sidereally, the lunar mansion it's in, it's all about, it's called Bharani. So Bharani is all about just being willing to do really extreme things to fulfill your desires. And people who consider themselves the rulers and leaders of this world, they've been doing that. They've been doing extreme things in order to pull off their desires. But our friend Saturn is the friend and champion of the underdog. Saturn is holding that back. So, thank you, Saturn. So we do have divine help here. And what else? Pretty much it for the notables. Mercury will be in retrograde at this time, conjunct the Sun. So, this is this is basically, I think, a signal for us to get ready to look into the dark. Because again, as Americans, Virgo, 10th house of government, the sun, which is going to now be below the equator from our perspective here in the northern hemisphere. The sun is going to the underworld. It's telling this retrograde Mercury, look into the underworld if you want to know the truth, if you want to know what's really going on in this world, if you want to know what has really been going on in this world. So, interesting day for an equinox. September the 25th, we get a new moon. Sidereally, 6 degrees Virgo, Western, 0 degrees Libra. So, Western astrology, that new moon is right on the cardinal cross. So the cardinal cross of the cardinal signs, it's 0 Aries, 0 Libra. That's one bar. Actually, it's the cross bar. And then we have 0 Cancer to 0 Capricorn. So, and then new moons. New moons are all about basically the sun and the moon, the soul and the mind come together to work together and to basically to create something, to conceive something that's really good and positive. It's like a conception. So the Western placement for this, right on the cardinal cross, that's pretty cool. So this to me is basically all about, you know, our collective mind and our collective soul is like, okay, how are we going to balance this world? How are we going to make changes in order to balance this world? Because again, Libra is balance, it's a cardinal sign, which is all about initiating change. So, it's pretty neat. And then, that new moon is conjunct within 5 degrees, so, you know, pretty good. That retrograde Mercury, and then conjunct within 7 degrees Venus. So, I look at conjunctions, within 10 degrees it's a conjunction. You know, outside of like 5 degrees it's not so strong, but it's still there. So this is an interesting one. You know, Mercury retrograde, it's correcting, it's fixing things. So Venus in Virgo, Venus is actually debilitated in Virgo. But debilitation is not really a bad thing, it just means the planet has to work hard. So Venus, it's social activity, it's romance, it's pleasure, it's sensuality, it's art, it's creativity. It's everything the sensual world has to offer. So I think this is about how do we build a more balanced, a more healthy physical environment for ourselves. So it's a good time to think about this, good time to manifest it in your own life. And then we come to an end, September 30th. This is when this square is really kicking in. Well, this is when this square is really complete between Saturn and Uranus. So they'll both be, sidereally, they'll both be at 24 degrees, and Western, what is that? They're both at 18. So sidereally, Saturn's at 24 Capricorn, Uranus is at 24 Aries. Cardinal signs, and then in Western, what is that? 18 Aquarius for Saturn and 18 Taurus for Uranus. So in one, the whatchamacallit, sidereal, the thing, you know, the thing. Sidereal, cardinal signs, Western, fixed signs. So there's kind of a dual nature to this square. So it's basically, again, Saturn is holding back basically leaders who want to do very extreme things in order to accomplish their desires, accomplish their goals, and have and attain their desires. And squares cause setbacks, they cause delays. So, this is a good thing. So, cardinal cross is about, you know, the cardinal signs being involved in this square. it's about Saturn is holding new things back, new developments back. And then when you look at it from the fixed sign perspective, it's basically Saturn is saying, no, you can't have that. You can't have all that power. You can't own 99% of everything in this world. You know, you're gonna have to break your monopoly and your power eventually. So, yeah, interesting little square here. And then, you know, because these planets move so slow, it'll be several years before they come back to, you know, these square positions. Alright, so that's gonna do it. We're about an hour here. Thank you very much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. And if you've not had an astrology reading with me, something I highly recommend. It's a great way to take another look at yourself and your life. It's basically, your chart is basically the blueprint for your life. It shows you what your greatest desire in life is, what you were born to do, and how you can reach that desire. And I also have rune readings, great mind map, great way to step back, see the situations you're in. Same thing with the I Ching readings. It's a great way to see the situations and circumstances in your life. And I also have some Qigong videos on sale for download. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be talking to you later.